So here's an attempt at putting some aspiration control on here. Let me get down close. My idea, this is just foam. It's underlay for laminate floor. So I thought if I just set that and cut those, made sort of like fingers, then as I make my adjustment, then that would just sort of fold around it. But as you can see, I wouldn't do this one. This idea was a fail. Okay, so isn't that like the homeliest looking thing you ever saw in a saw? But anyways, right now, let me come in here a little closer. I've got a little bit of an opening right in there, and underneath it as well. It's harder to see. But that is a lot better than having that big gaping hole opened up there. So that should make a difference. And I'm just going to leave that out of foam for now. And if that makes any kind of a difference, then I'm thinking I might make this piece out of, I don't know, cardboard, or maybe even, I've got some 1/4-inch Luan plywood. I could make it out of that, fasten it with a couple of screws, but have a finger that would come down over that hole too, so that it would be a little bit more complicated to remove it, but it would block the allow for a blocking of the air so that it would aspirate better. But anyway, I don't want to make it too complex because I want to be able to get that off quickly if I have to angle my arbor. But anyway, that's what we're going to go with. So I'm going to put the handle back on this, and then I think the next step is put the top on it, and that's going to require a lot of grunts and groans and some alignment. Okay, we're back working on the saw. We're trying to make some adjustments here because the blade and the arbor and the trunnion and the motor mount and everything are mounted to the saw base, and then the table bolts on the saw base. Then we have to make adjustments on the table to make sure that the miter slots here and here run parallel to the blade. Now what I've done is I've checked for run out on my blade. I have about 2 thou on that, which is pretty good, I think. And then I have this, oops, wait till I get on this side. I have this rig built up here to check to see if my miter slots are parallel to the blade. And what this is just a stick of wood that I have clamped to my miter gauge. I have my miter gauge set at 90 degrees, or pretty close. No, it is. I'm only joking. Well, actually, I should check that. So here's how I'm going to check that. I'm going to let that go there. Move that over there. I'm going to take the miter gauge out of there. Just flip it upside down. Loosen my knob there. Take the stop out. And then slide that in until the gauge comes flush with the edge of the table. And then I'll tighten that up. Yep. Take that back out of there. Put that back in there. Then I can put this on here and I'll reclamp that. I'm laughing here because I'm holding the camera so that I can get a good picture, but then when I go to do something, I move the camera away like that. Oh well. So over the top here now, look at that. What I'll do is I'll adjust this screw so that it just barely touches the blade, or not quite touches the blade. And then over here I have some feeler gauges, and I'll check that gap in there, and then I'll cleverly slide this whole unit to the other side and check that gap right there until both gaps are the same. Alright, so we're going to try and set this up. So I've got my jig set up here, and I think I have my table square because I was working at it off camera. So anyways, here we go. I've got a 4 thou feeler gauge here, so you can just barely feel that rubbing. And when I come on this side of the blade, just barely feel that rubbing. So I think I'm good. Okay folks, there we go, look at that. The wings are on it. My table saw has wings. So we just have to put the throat plate in, but that's no biggie. We've got the rails that go on the sides, on the front, not the sides, on the front and the back. And then I'll reinstall my little table extension. remount the switch down here. I had a little problem with that switch. It wasn't sealing in, so I had to take it apart and clean it. But anyway, that's the way she goes. And when we're all done with that, well, I'll bring you back then and I'll show you cutting a piece of wood with it just to see how it works, if it works. I expect it'll work. Alright then, here we are. We got the table back on, we got the rails back on, we got the wings back on, we got the fence on, we got the starter stop button put in, we've got well, you can't see it, but I put the little plug in the back to help with the cut down on the air leakage. We put the fence on. Because we moved this back rail, I had to adjust the height of the fence. That might even be a little bit too high now, but anyways, this gap here is too much. I might lower that later. But I'd rather it be a little high than low, because then it catches and everything. So anyhow, my setup here is a setup to see if the fence is parallel. We have the dial indicator set up right here, touching against the fence, and it's mounted to my miter gauge. What happens with your fence, or with my fence at least, it kind of comes and goes a little bit. So I put this sacrificial piece of melamine on here. That helped it a little, but depending on the weather, the melamine swells up so it can change shape. The aluminum doesn't, but I don't like running the aluminum right up to the blade. So anyways, that's the name of that tune. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to set my gauge here to 0, right about there. And now as I move this along, we'll see just how out of a line this fence is. But if it's not great, then I'm going to say it's parallel. If it's really bad, then I can adjust to make it parallel, because down in here on these arms, there's underneath that, there's pads that run against the rail and set screws that you can use to adjust either side to make the end of it go like that. So here we go. We're set on 0 approximately. Watch this. It's going to move. So there, it's getting closer by 10 thou, 20, almost 20 thou. Back to 0, and 20 thou away. So you know what? I gain 20, I lose 20, and it's like super hot and humid here today. And for an old guy in the woods, I'm going to say that's pretty darn good. Okay, we got her set up, just an old hunk of 2x4 here. No nails in it, that's a good thing. The blade raised up about high enough. I'm going to turn on the aspiration. Okay, it's going to get loud. Hang tight. A quick survey is, I'm going to say there's less sawdust, but I don't know if you can see that. That's pretty square. Okay, here we go with a piece of aspenite. And aspenite always makes a lot of sawdust. So let's try this again. I'm going to say the aspiration is a lot better, but my fence is a little too close on this end. I don't know whether you noticed, when I was cutting, cuts good here, but it's rubbing on the teeth pretty bad at the back there to finish the cut. So I have to make a little adjustment on that fence, but other than that, I'm going to give this puppy a thumbs up. I don't know if you learned anything about changing bearings in the table saw motor and trunnion or not. Well, sweat in my eyes. But it was a long and involved job, a lot longer than I thought it was going to take. But I'm glad I did it. Glad I checked that motor, because I thought the motor bearings were great, and they were not great. They were a long ways from great. So anyway, click like, click subscribe. Look forward to hearing your comments about what you saw, what you thought. Any kind of comment at all. I'm interested in hearing it and seeing it and reading it. Anyway, that's the end of this project. And thanks for coming along. And here's my saw all set up, ready to go. Now I can do another project. Click like, click subscribe. See you later. Talk to you.